Okay, my friends, what do you think? I know it's kind of a rapid shift.
Does this mean you're opening the floor to sharing?
That's right, Matt. You go for it.
I would love to. Thank you, Ayya, so much for a wonderful topic. And as always, I just have to say that it's so beautifully outlined in a way that makes the Dhamma so relevant to our daily lives. This had a lot of resonance with me, a lot. Many years ago, I began a process with great intention of unpacking this Dhamma package. And for quite a long time, it was not particularly productive. And I was unschooled in any kind of a real process. And given my own upbringing, let's say both culturally and religiously, and with that conditioning, it was not only unproductive, it might have been a little bit destructive, because my experience was to begin to unpack that package and look at those proclivities, the thoughts, words, deeds, behaviors that just intuitively felt wrong, simply led to self-condemnation. And so it only reinforced some negative self perceptions. And then I'll fast forward to keep this brief. About 7-8 years ago, I encountered the Dhamma. First drawn to it through messages of metta and karuna from talks I'd begun listening to, and I thought, what is this? And then I explored further and discovered this practice and these teachings. And so I want to share two specific things. One is one of the more profound and instrumental discoveries for me was this notion of skillful versus unskillful behaviors, or wholesome versus unwholesome behaviors. That was a huge turning point for me. And it is to this day, because it helped me to kind of neutralize and take the moralization that I'd been conditioned to out of that equation. And it allowed me to look at these things with greater clarity for what they are. Perhaps to some extent, I think, to not be so personally identified with them as the self, and to be able to work with them in a more skillful manner. And this has been huge for me. And that one teaching, or concept, notion, whatever, really was a game changer for me. And it really did allow me to look with a much greater self-compassion at those harmful behaviors. And, it's as if the shift for me, and you use some really wonderful analogies. For me, it was the parent who's correcting the child, and the message to them with all of their energy is, I love you, you are a good person, but you've done something harmful, versus you're a bad person because you've done something harmful. And that's really the shift that I've had to make. And it's a long process. I mean, for me, it has been, and it continues. But that's been my experience. And once I could do that and take that person, which is also the teaching on anatta for sure, has really been hugely instrumental in my working with this. And that's really all I want to share. But what a beautifully, eloquently outlined. Thank you. I really identified with everything you shared, and the meditation.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate your sharing. It always helps to hear the progress and the experience of people, and it helps to hear each other's voices, because that's a huge impact on us, another person's voice. So thank you. It's great. And I was thinking about your analogy of the parent telling the child you're wonderful and I love you, and you did something that's unskillful versus you're a bad person. Um, and or you're being bad, you've done something bad, and so therefore you're bad. Sometimes it's even stronger in us. We really take in that I'm bad and I can never get better. And so we really have to watch out for those wrong ideas, wrong views coming through. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Ayya, so much for the focus on confidence and the unpacking of what we bring. And this is going back into more things that I experience as a legally blind person, where I'm not so skillful in dealing with the public, and seeking any instruction or reflection that you might have. It's pretty much every day when I go into a store, food shopping or something. If I'm going by myself, I need someone usually who works there to help me find something, and inevitably they don't really want to, and they degrade me or say it's right over there. I'll have my cane out sometimes, or I'll just say I'm legally blind, I can't see, I need help finding it, I need you to take me to it, and I need you to show me exactly where it is. And each step of the way, they don't want to. And they fuss and they fight me. And we get to the place in the aisle where it is. And then they'll just point it, say, it's right there. I'm sure you can see it. It's right there. And I begin being heightened. So I approach these encounters open and expecting actually goodwill, and constantly encounter pretty regularly, like 90% of the time, not goodwill. And you're talking about trying to recognize other people's packages and their stains, but I have a really hard time staying focused. And with each step of the way, I think it's going to get better. Going down the aisle, okay, now it's going to be okay. It's not okay. It's over and over again. And it's just like, how I wonder within myself, those moments when someone is trying to attack me or assault me as a woman with a white cane, those are quick, they're over fast. These are extended, slow pulling the bandage off of me by somebody else who just wants to hurt me, have power over me, refuse to help me. This is very common to not, I hear it from blind people all the time, or legally blind people, that there's an opportunity for people to refuse help, to be degrading, to be insulting. So staying even through these extended interactions and encounters with other people's stains or their packages. And then what often happens is I then begin, towards the end of these situations, I begin to really heighten. I start to grow a tail and I make it worse. And I'm saying, you're not helping me. I become heightened. So any virtue thought.
Okay, sure. I mean, first of all, I really appreciate the fact that you're asking, the fact that you're thinking about, like, how can I make this better? And just the challenge of the conditions is really, really tough. So I have a couple of questions. Do you ever encounter otherwise, where you go into a place and you ask for help and they're like, sure, let me show you this.
Sometimes.
Great, great.
Yeah. And that's what I expect. So I don't go in there armed for a fight. I go in there expecting goodwill and kindness.
Right.
So when I encounter it, it's kind of like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
You know, and then I tell the supervisor, this person was so kind and so helpful.
Yeah. Is there, when a person starts to show resistance, is it possible to this is just an idea, is it possible to, and maybe you already do it, say something to help them know that you recognize like how busy they must be or how stressed they might be, you know, kind of like, you know, the first sign of the I don't want to help you is like, I know this, yeah, you know, like kind of saying something like, I know this is challenging. I know you're busy. You know, something that helps, because this can change the dynamic sometimes, that they are seen and heard. That might be useful. That might help sometimes. And I think it also helps us, because when we look at like what the other person might be experiencing, it helps us maintain more equanimity, I think, because we're not rooted in, oh, well, I need this, even though you do need it. You know, it kind of changes the energy.
Yeah. May I respond to your wondering about that, the approach? I have said that often. I know you're very busy. You might not know the store that well, that kind of thing. But the thing is that it's not the experience that they're too busy. It's that it's an opportunity for them. They're angry. They just like the people who tell me to walk into traffic when they know that I'll get hit by a car. They want to make a meal of somebody. Really encountering their or feeling like they need to do something to hurt somebody because they believe they'll feel better. And if I were to say to them, look, I know you're trying to hurt me because you believe you have a delusion that you'll feel better by doing it. I can't really do that.
No, that doesn't sound like it's going to work.
Yeah. So I have to have, and I know you're busy. On rare occasions, somebody is busy, but most of the time they're just sort of standing around and they're like, wow, I get to hurt somebody. And again, I don't take it personally, because when I'm in blindness groups, you know, we talk about this all the time, that somebody just has an opportunity. And so I need another way, and maybe it's just waiting as I'm thinking out, you know, just sort of waiting and nodding and looking at the person and giving them a chance to, which I've never done before, I can try it, giving them a chance to sort of look at me and calm down and know that I'm being calm. Like meet them with total calm and regard and warmth of spirit. I don't bring warmth of spirit at some point. I bring anger rises, and sometimes it's that they don't know the store. And then that's the supervisor's responsibility for having assigned somebody to this who doesn't know the store. And then it's unskillful. I'll say, well, can we find somebody else who knows this, maybe who knows the store? You know, I'll get a bit of a tone. And instead of warmly saying it, maybe we should find somebody who knows the store, and then the stress is off. So you know, as you're creating space for me to think about this, I appreciate it. There's more things that I can do to bring warmth and calm and patience. but there is this tale of, as you've noted, and this can be spoken to, of, as opposed to when I encounter somebody who's attempting to assault me or wants to kill me, I don't ever in those situations wish that it were different. I'm not sitting there and saying, or standing there and thinking, I wish this were different, but I do in these cases that drag on. So I can be attentive to that tale of kind of like, oh, I'm noticing that I wish this were different.
Yeah. I like where you're going with this. And even when it feels like this person should know the store and they don't. Maybe when you say, like, is there someone who knows that area of the store, not implying that they don't know enough or don't know anything. You know? You idiot, why are you working here? Why don't you learn the store? You know, it's like, yeah. Finding a way for people to have a way to hold their own dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because most of the time those reactions are unexamined in people, you know, maybe they're not even thinking, oh, I get to make a meal of this person. It's all just like a bundle of reactions, probably, you know, and yeah, it's really challenging.
And sometimes it really is that they'll be standing in front of something, they'll say, we don't carry that. Nope, we don't have that. And I'll be like, I know you do. So this happens. I know you do. This goes back to, I know you do. It's somewhere around here. I can't see it. Nope, we don't have that here. And then some stranger will stand there and say, yes, you do. It's right there. And then and then the person gets really defensive, and then I have to do that. And then the stranger will say, I'm going to complain to your supervisor about how you treated this blind woman. And it just kind of like,
yeah, maybe a comment like, oh yeah, that can happen to anybody, you know, of course, you know. And I'm guessing that, I mean, I don't know, is it true that you can sometimes see some things? Is it a mix?
It's I'm just legally blind. I have no central vision at all. So I can see some colors, but not accurately. I can sort of see shapes. But even if something's right in front of me, I won't tell. Like, I don't know what I look like. I don't know what, so I don't know. So I look, the other thing is that I look more sighted than I am.
That's what I was getting at. It's like, I think people can get confused. They'll think this person's just putting me on because obviously she saw me do that thing that I just did. You know, maybe at some times there might be an opportunity to explain a little bit more about how that works.
Yeah.
So that they can understand that you actually do need the help.
Yeah, and maybe the reverse, that they are actually believing that I'm trying to make a meal of them or dupe them or surprise them. And a lot of people just learn as a human race about, oh, don't fool me. You know, I mean, I could walk around doing this and kind of like, I look like I make eye contact, but if I'm looking at someone, I don't see them at all. So, but I sometimes have my cane out, but not always. So those are good suggestions. I can sort of listen to and see how, if I do all of these things, and it's the arrows, like the arrows, I pay attention. Don't let this end, because these people are not put there in order to torment me. They just have landed like napalm in front of me with their package. You know, with their, I've started thinking of some things as being like a holodeck from Star Trek: The Next Generation, where I've walked into their program about life, and kind of like, how do I turn off your program now before my program starts kicking in? It's just really,
Or how can I like relate to your program with empathy?
yeah.
Let my new program be, I'm going to be empathetic. And God, look at that suffering. Yeah, you know, it's like,
Thank
yeah,
you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
you're welcome. Yes, Jules.
Hi. Actually, I have a question about metta and compassion and meditating on these things. Um, I have difficulty with really feeling metta for people who I have issues with. And whenever I try to meditate on metta for these people, I keep straying into what they've done that I have issues with, and it just doesn't. I can't give rise to the feeling within myself.
Mhm.
But what does work with me is if I focus on compassion and thinking, well, they think that what they're doing is going to make them happy. And they must have had things in their past that make them do things like this. And I've had things in my past that have made that, have led me to do unskillful things. And I've done unskillful things because I've thought they would make me happy and they don't. So I want compassion for myself. I can feel compassion for them. And through that, I can wish them benevolence, but I can't get to the metta straightforward. I can only get to the metta through the sense of compassion. And I feel like the way that Brahma Viharas are presented, it's like you should be able to do like each of them separately, or do you? But intellectually, it seems like they're more melded together. I mean, my sense of it, it's really melded together. You can't really feel one without other ones.
Mhm. Yeah, I can validate that. And I really think throughout the teachings, as we read them in the suttas and all of that, we want to learn what that means. But then when we take it into experience, it's not going to be just like it's in the books. And that's okay. I think what you're finding is fine. Do what works, do what brings more compassion, more Brahma Vihara into the mind. And then when the story starts to intrude, see what you want to do with it, with mindfulness. Maybe you kind of step back from the story and observe, this is just the story. This is what happened, but that's not what's really important. And one of the ways to work with that aspect of it is through some kind of either somatic experiencing or something like feeding your demons, where the story part just gets like one phrase or one line. When that happened, this is what feeling came up, and then notice that feeling in the body and be with it in the body, because it's pointing at a misunderstanding in our own mind that makes that experience somehow important. And it has to do with a sense of self and maybe a sense of safety and all the other things that come in our package when we become living beings, right? And so it's like recognizing that, and because it's the story, repeating the story, that makes us sad, angry, upset, increases our sense of fear or worry, or, there's all kinds of problems with it. And then at the same time, we need to remember that this person is capable of this and make wise decisions about how much to associate with them based on that. It's like, bring up this often, Ajahn Chah talking about knowing the animals in the forest. You don't treat the tiger the way you would treat the bunny rabbit. They're different. And you need to kind of know what you're dealing with. So there's always this interplay between the conventional self and the non-self, the transcendent, the unworldly, the higher mind. We're working to develop higher virtue, higher wisdom, and higher mind, which is higher meditation or higher samadhi. It's like we're working with this, and this is where we're headed, but we have the conventional self at the same time to make use of, to take care of. So it sounds to me like using compassion as the way in is just fine. I agree that there's more of a melding of them than we kind of see in the stories. But there's this tiny little sutta, and I think it's in the Book of Fives in the Anguttara Nikaya, that talks about ways to remove a grudge or resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is to use metta, but the second one is to use compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Buddha gives these kinds of lists, it doesn't mean you can go in order, maybe that's useful, but you can use any one of them. And one of them is to avoid the person.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is to recognize that this is their karma. When people do things that are good, they have good results. And when they do things that are bad, there are bad results. And the karma, the way karma works is going to take care of whatever, like you can just let go of it. We don't have to do anything. We can just remember that, that's how it works. And there's a fifth one. Is there not a fifth one? Anybody else remember? So often there's a list of X and I get X minus one. The ways to get rid of a grudge, let go of a grudge, like it's even in one of our chanting books in the back. It was something. So loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity are all in there, and ignoring or staying away from them. But anyway, we can find it and we can send you the link, or you can just look it up. If you look it up,
Yes.
Ways to remove a grudge, and find the sutta reference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Neil.
Yes, hi. Yeah, it's so interesting that Jules's question.
Forrest just posted it in the chat. Sorry, Neil.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Forrest.
Her question is so related to a question that came up for me. But first, I want to say thank you so much for your talk at the beginning. The package thing was really, really helpful.
Okay.
While you were guiding the meditation through the Brahma Viharas, I suddenly had a realization that a reason why I have often resisted metta practice as a practice is because I think I'm kind of vague on what the difference is between metta and compassion.
Mm.
And then based on what you were just saying for Jules's question, I think I have a sense similarly that compassion is, I don't want to say passive, but it's more internal. And it seems to me you need to develop that before you can then reach out with the more active, loving kindness. And I'm not sure if you would agree with that, but I mean, loving kindness just sort of feels, I realize it feels kind of vague to me. I mean, what is the difference between, can you talk a little bit about what the
Mhm.
specific differences are between loving kindness and compassion?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they are very related. In fact, I think loving kindness really provides the substrate for all of the Brahma Viharas. And I think that's probably why the Buddha emphasized it so much. And then each time would say, and then there's also compassion and appreciative joy and equanimity, kind of like, recognizing that there is this love for ourselves, this love for others, that as we erase our defilements becomes more and more expanded and full and pure. And that it is very much related to compassion, because the compassion is for the suffering, for whatever living being would be suffering. And it's understandable that that is so tangible, that is so directly experienceable, like our own suffering and the suffering of others. And that might be the way that our heart actually gets touched because of that suffering. And in fact, suffering that's the key to our awakening, to recognize there's suffering, to get that first noble truth. There's suffering here. Suffering is afoot. Like we can put the sign on the door, suffering in progress. It's like, so it's like, yes. And then having compassion for that suffering is so natural when we are kind of able to rise out of our own suffering, or maybe we're deep in it even, and we see the suffering in others. We can have compassion. So of course it's not disconnected from the love. It's just that the love also can come without suffering being there. I mean, life is not all suffering. That isn't exactly what the Buddha said. There is joy, there is happiness, there are those times of contentment and peace and well-wishing, and we as human beings go through a lot of effort to try to create those experiences, holidays and celebrations, and to really tap into that. And there are times of great gratitude, and it's like loving kindness is present with all of that. It's not just there when suffering's there, but compassion is there for when suffering is there, when we're tuned in to that aspect. And so I think that it feels vague when we're trying to generate it on the cushion. And then when we're really out in the world, you might say, when we're experiencing what's happening, compassion might be what comes to the fore first, and that's okay. But the loving kindness too is really palpable, and this is one of the reasons for me it feels very much like PT. So that joy that comes, that unworldly pleasant feeling that arises when we become calm. Metta feels a lot like that to me. And I think that also is related.
I guess I'm still struggling a little bit with it, because you're using the word love a lot. And I guess I can relate more to the kindness part of loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't, I mean, love is such a broad word, at least in the English language, that to me consists of all those other things.
It does.
And I mean, it's to go at a practice of feeling love. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I know there are, there's, the traditional or certainly commentarial way to go through, I love,
Yeah.
you, right, the other person, and then the not so nice person. I don't know. I'm still, because then when you said it feels like pity, I'm thinking, well, to me that's kind of sympathetic joy. I mean, what is the difference? Yeah, I don't want to belabor it. You gave me a little bit.
But this
you gave
is
me
great.
A little bit of a sense of it, but I'm still not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that as I was using the word love, I was thinking, can I get away with this right now? Because most of the time I mention that I don't like the translation of metta as love because of exactly what you said. We have so many definitions or impressions and it's got all kinds of stuff in it that may not even be that wholesome. So,
Right.
So usually I really disagree with using that as the translation for metta. However, my split second judgment about using it here was, I think I can get away with it with these people. Because they know I'm not talking about, those other things. But it's a good point to make clear, as you're saying, that when my experience and my understanding of metta, of course, is that there is kindness there. It's kindness, but it's this unconditional love that's not wanting anything from anyone. It's a no strings attached love that doesn't come because you're a nice person or you're like this or you're like that or that's, it's just there. The heart is full of it. And it's really an unworldly thing. Like people have said to me, like unconditional love is an impossibility. No, it's an impossibility in the material physical world. Yes. It's not, it doesn't come from that. It comes from something beyond that. And I think I wouldn't worry even a fraction of a second about whether you can put the label that's correct on a divine abiding experience. Who cares? It's like, it's going to be a mix and it's all good, and we're really just talking about different facets of the same thing. But what's in there? It's this boundless heart of all of these, like joy, compassion, equanimity, and loving kindness or loving friendliness, but it's not I don't think it's enough to just say goodwill, because metta really goes beyond that. It's a boundless, unconditional quality.
And yet you want to make it the first step in the practice. You got to start with this boundless quality.
That's right. Just jettison right into
I think for me personally, I'm going to put it at the end. I'm going to wait till I get to equanimity before I can concentrate on boundless love. But no, I get what you're saying.
Plenty fair enough. And I think the Buddha gave so many methods, because we do need to come to things from different places. And it's like, it's wholesome and it's working. Do that. It's a tapestry. It's a collection. You pull one string, you're going to get the whole thing. It's okay. And it's okay for the labels not to fit. In Thailand, these arahants all the time are saying, it's not like it's in the books. That's just in the books. Don't get caught up in what's in the books. And that's because the experience is the real deal. And so, just keep going.
Thank you.
Paula?
I wanted to, hello, Ayya, thank you for your teachings. I wanted to talk a little bit about an experience I had that kind of ties in with everything, but not, I mean, everything ties in with everything, but I was with some friends and there was some, I guess you could call it gossip, but it was also these people talking about what had happened in another situation. I wasn't there, with a particular person whose behavior was offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not there when this happened, so I can't really speak to how I would have felt if I was there. He said something that was inappropriate and this behavior was inappropriate. And it's in a tight kind of club that I belong with. And my reaction at the time, because I was still kind of raw from your teachings Wednesday, is that, oh, wow, I had a little bit of compassion for this person because they obviously were suffering. And it was what they said and their actions obviously were consistent with them having issues in their life and not being able to react, interact well. And so then I was sort of confused as to what to do in this situation when these people were talking, because I could stay quiet and not contribute and not say anything, write speech or just stay quiet. But I instead chose to say, well, he must have some issues going on. What can we do? And there was a mix of reactions. There was some people would say, well, you weren't there. You don't know what that was like to be in this situation, and other people. So my question is coming down to when you're in and you yourself said that when you're in community, that's when these things come up. So this is my community, at least right now. And my question then is, when there is some kind of speech going on that you recognize as being possibly not wholesome, where people are putting a person down and saying this person has a big ego, like what should your reaction be? Can you talk to that?
Well, of course, the first thing I have to do is give the disclaimer, it depends.
Okay.
And there's probably no right answer, really, because and one of the things to make sure that we don't do is, after people have not agreed with us or liked what we said, to take that as the basis for our judgment of our own of what we had done. So let me make that clearer. Like you said, he must have some issues going on. What can we do to support him? Something like that. I don't know how you feel about that after the various reactions that people had, but from the sound of it, that was a perfectly reasonable and compassionate thing to say. Sometimes we reevaluate what we've done based on the response. Like, I felt quite unhappy with the things I've said because the people didn't react in a positive way. But that's not the right thing to use for our evaluation. The right thing to use is, was this a kind, compassionate thing to say? And it's never going to be possible to include all of the aspects for the right balance I mean, you could say, yeah, that was really unskillful of him, and he must have issues going on, something like that. But even if we don't happen to in one gulp be able to, like put all of the the balance out there, the fact is you brought something into the conversation that could help people reflect, and you never know when they're going to really make progress with that based on what you said. Even if they're completely opposed to it in the moment, it might have some beneficial effect later. So it sounds to me like you're close enough to these people that it is good to say something. And it is good to broaden the perspective, if we can, to include the empathy for the person who's being kind of distanced or ridiculed. Because it's true, it's never all black and white. It's not all one way. I mean, the Buddha was great about saying, okay, if a person is doing this and this and this, and the first thing is wholesome and the other two are unwholesome, then he can be praised for the first one and blamed for the other two. There's always a mix, almost always a mix, and that's the nature of this world, the dark and the light. And so there's, like I've heard people reflect on working with people who've done really terrible things. And they say, when you look deeper into it, you unpack that package even further, then you see like what's happened behind it, the trauma that's there, and the challenges that are there. And it doesn't make what they're doing okay. It just means that there's more to see and more to look into. So it's hard to know what the right thing is to say at the right time. We just try. And timing matters. So, and the Buddha said himself that even the Buddha will say what's true. It's going to have a beneficial purpose. And it's going to be said at the right time. But if the person likes it or not, that's not the criteria that you base your evaluation of what you said on. Because sometimes they're not going to like it. It's still true. It still has a good purpose, and it was said at the proper time.
Yeah, because I have a big mouth and I just can't sit aside when I recognize that there's some unskillful discussion going on.
Yeah, and you got to look at yourself to know whether the big mouth is really about like, I have to make sure I'm seen, or I'm like, like whatever, if there's some ego behind it, and
right,
and sift that away and just look at like, is this beneficial or potentially beneficial?
because I feel like there's a lot of times when I'm in discussion with people and I'm like, wow, it's not only just this. You could say, this is an example of many times when we're in community with people and you see that their way of looking things is totally different than you, and you just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Like, people will like compliment you for, maybe what you're wearing or how you're looking, or, it's just like, I don't want to go there. That's not something that I want to discuss, but then you don't know quite what to say.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the challenges, because, when I first encountered the Dhamma, and maybe you all have had this experience too, it was a paradigm shift. You're looking at the world differently. I had to listen to Ajahn Sumedho's talks over and over again, same talk. I mean, because I had to wrap my head around this. And, when you're talking about, well, I don't want to be complimented on what I'm wearing or how I'm looking. And it's like, yeah, okay. But that's the way people are taught to be polite in the world, to try to give each other some kind of encouragement or support or acceptance or some, what are they really saying? Do they really care what your clothes look like? Maybe they do, but probably not. It's more about connecting, maybe. You can look a little deeper. But when it comes to something like righteous anger or, some kind of hatred of other people or discrimination or, there's all kinds of really unwholesome things, views that people have that they think are completely correct. It's okay to go to war and kill all kinds of people because, we're the ones who have the right idea. It's like, no, then we feel like, okay, that's important. That's important to take a stand. And silence is a kind of, kind of going along with it. That's the sign. And we don't want to do that. So at least we can say, I don't agree with that. Or I don't believe that. We don't have to get too much deeper into that unless they're interested, but at least you've put a stake in the ground. And then we always have to be looking for the ego appropriating what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're saying, because it always wants to get in there, make a self out of something. So we want to try to keep that reined in. I'm not saying that to you because I think you've got that I'm not, this is just a general thing.
No, I understand. I agree. And I thank you very much for your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I get it.
We have 2 minutes. Karen, do you still want to say something or did you just think the time was gone?
No, I was just having a hard time articulating my question, so I thought I would save it for another day.
Okay.
Thanks.
Totally fine. Yeah. I'm rethinking. We've been thinking about reducing the amount of time for this session to an hour and a half, but today we used it really well. Okay, there's 1 thumbs up. What do you think? An hour and a half is okay? Okay, so
several people are like,
yeah. Okay, should we just start at 9 to 10:30? I think we'll just keep it at 9, or would you rather start at 9:30? No, 9 o'clock. Okay, we'll keep it at 9 because then, people might show up at that time.